Steve Avery, nicknamed the Kid, was one of the best pitchers in the early 90s and was a key integral part in that Braves' early success in the early 90s. But it seems that as time goes by, Steve Avery's name is not so much mentioned nowadays, especially when we talk about the Atlanta Braves. Have we forgotten about Steve Avery? Steve Avery, when he was healthy and early on in his career, he was one of the best pitchers in the game. What he did from 1991 and 93, that 3 year run, was outstanding. And I am here with a lifelong Braves fan, Avery Jones. Avery, Steve Avery he's one of those pitchers, one of those players I could say that he rose quickly, but his career went down fast went down right away because of injuries. But at the same time, he also had personal issues going on behind the scenes. So, but through it all, he was someone that he was very good and also a player that there was no quit in him. He always tried to come back, especially late in his career when he wasn't the same, but he always fought back. So he is someone that has been forgotten throughout the years. I feel like he's been forgotten. But what are your memories of Steve Avery?
Yeah, it's easy to forget about Steve Avery, especially when he was with the Braves for the majority of his career. He kind of in the background behind Glavine, Smoltz, and Maddox, and of course, the just a different name spelling between my first name and his last name. So, that's how I ended up, just following his career and being a Braves fan and knowing you had this really good, steady pitching staff with they were young, but they had a veteran mindset. And, in the 7 years he's with Atlanta, he gets a World Series, he goes to the All-Star game, and he's also the National League Championship Series MVP, which makes sense during a time when Atlanta's pitching was literally lights out. So, if you look at his career, you know, just shy of 300 games, had 297. You know, overall has a 500 over 500 winning percentage, won 96 games, just shy of winning 100 games, won 96 games, lost 83, ERA just over 4. I mean, career-wise, those are very good numbers, but they get lost in where the majority of his career was spent. And then, yes, as of injuries and other issues, but even though I love reminiscing about his days in Atlanta, I am also reminded of why kind of a secondary team I started to follow because of him. He only played 2 seasons in Boston. And his 2 seasons in Boston actually kind of mirrored what I remember when he was in Atlanta. So, knowing Boston at the time of the late 90s, early 2000s, trying to keep up with the Yankees, he was there to kind of have a foundation. Even though he wasn't there long, but it was enough of a foundation that eventually, Boston figured out that, hey, okay, wait a minute, this guy came from a team that had stellar pitching. Hey, we got to figure this out too. And later, Boston did that. But, during that time, that stretch between like 91 and 98, I mean, there were when he was healthy, when he was on the mound, he was locked in. Not as locked in as maybe like Glavine or Maddox would be because their ERAs were more like around 2. Smoltz, just a little under 3 as well. but his ERA was, hovering around 4, but he was getting a lot of run support. And that's always, a good background for a pitcher. I'm like, you get run support, that's fine, but eventually, if you don't get that support, it's going to hinder your pitching progress. And it's hard that he can be forgotten knowing he was drafted by the Braves. But I think the resiliency, because his last game was with Detroit in 2003. He was drafted out of high school in Michigan by he went to high school at John F. Kennedy High School. I'm like, what better way to be resilient, from a president that, kind of no one thought could be president, so it's it is tough. It is tough to to forget about him. And then when he pops up in a conversation, you're like, wait a minute. This guy had a good stretch. He needs to be in a conversation, may not be in a Hall of Fame conversation, but a conversation good as pitching prowess, definitely.
He was drafted by the Braves as the third overall pick in the 1988 draft. 1993 was his best year. He went 18-6 that year, 2.94 ERA, three complete games, 125 strikeouts. He had five consecutive seasons with 100 or more strikeouts from 91 through 95. The 98 season with the Red Sox, it was the first season since 94, I believe it was, that he won 10 games or more, but he won 10 games for the Red Sox in 98. Um, a signature moment that is not too much talked about, and that is game 4 of the 1995 NLCS against the Reds. The Braves are on the verge of sweeping the Reds. Bobby Cox, may God rest his soul, gave the ball to Steve Avery at a time where everyone was trying to deny, like, no, don't give him the ball. He's been inconsistent these last 2 seasons. Bobby Cox basically said, I believe in you. He gave the ball to Steve Avery, and Steve Avery went out there. Avery, he pitched 6 innings, struck out 6 Cincinnati Reds, and only gave up 2 hits to complete the 4-game series sweep. And they went on to the World Series, which we know they won it all that year. But again, this goes to show the kind of man that Bobby Cox was to his players. And yeah, but yeah, he will forever be a Braves legend, in my opinion. He should be a Braves legend. He was there for 5, 6 seasons. He got a World Series. He was an LCS MVP. And John Smoltz, this was John Smoltz. He said that he respected the fact that he tried to come back, and Steve Avery did something that not too many players would love to do, but not every player gets a chance of doing that, and that is to play for your hometown. And he did that with Detroit.
Yes, yes,
Um,
he's from Michigan. Yes.
yeah, I believe John Smoltz did the same thing. Tom Glavine is from Boston. He didn't get a
Boston.
chance to
Yeah,
play,
no, yeah.
but I feel that great players, good or great players, at some point in their career, if they have the opportunity, if they have the control, free agency wise, to play at least one season in their hometown, they should.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that because we hear about, we mostly hear it with football players and do it and occasionally with baseball players. The last actually one just recently occurred. Brandon Phillips signed with Cincinnati to end up retiring as a Red. So you mostly hear it with football players, signing that 1-day contract to, and end their career with either the team that drafted them or their hometown team, if you will. But I think it can be doable for the way that there's a lot of competitiveness, not just in professional athletes, but and not to say that there's more competitiveness in one sport than another, but there's something about the competitiveness of a baseball player because, and we've seen it a lot in baseball careers, we're seeing it right now, I hate to keep mentioning the Braves, but Chris Sale. Chris Sale. I am a great respect for Chris Sale, but I know of Chris Sale's, feats when he played with Boston. Now he's playing with Atlanta. I think he's been with him for 4 years now, very consistent. But eventually, either he's gonna know where his stopping point is. So it would not surprise me at some point, depending on when Chris Sale would like to ride off in the sunset, if you will, that he does not sign a contract back with Boston to, kind of hang it up, if you will, because we've seen it with Ichiro Suzuki. That was not surprising to me. When that happened, I'm like, okay, he's going to go back to Seattle and he's going to do that. But I think there is something that even though, like we're talking about, he's not in a Hall of Fame conversation, but this is a conversation that needs to be brought up again when you start talking about that Atlanta pitching story, that legacy of Atlanta pitching, if you will. Just like the title of this, he can be forgotten, but know that he was part of that stretch, even though he didn't have like the best ERA like his teammates did. But as you mentioned, when Bobby Cox needed him on the mound, he believed in him. He told him, he goes, "This is your game. You need it. You're needed. We need you." And he got the job done. You know, maybe I think, or I'd like to, not maybe, but I'd like to. Retired numbers are kind of like if you can't get to the Hall of Fame, if you can get your number retired, I think that's another blessing in disguise because the team and its fan base love you and respect you and the memories of there are enough to say, hey, we're gonna retire your number. It's not sure. Like I said, his time in Atlanta, it can reflect that his 33 could get retired. But if not, as a baseball fan, you need you like a lot of pitchers can be cast aside. I've noticed that's one position that for a pitcher, if you ain't got the stuff, you can be cast aside very quickly. Of course, John Smoltz, when he wasn't a starter, became a reliever and a very good one. Um, but yeah, that's kind of tough, when we hear about have we forgotten. We're probably gonna have more pitching stories in this series than anything, I think, because those are the ones that seem to be forgotten the most.
When I started How We Forgot Avery, I focus on just everything, on baseball, basketball, just in general, players in general, whatever position. And it turned out to be one of the best things that I created in terms of playlists for the brand the MMA Journal. But this is the first time that I'm actually collaborating with someone else like yourself to do Have We Forgotten? And for some reason, when Steve Avery came into my head, I'm like, I gotta get Avery on this because, is a lifelong Braves fan. So, but when I think of Have We Forgotten, yes, is players and athletes that were either underappreciated, underrated, or they just completely got forgotten. But also at the same time, this is a celebration. of what they brought to the table, their contributions. And I have
Respect and
and I have
praise,
and I've done and I've
respect and
done
praise, if you
yeah,
will.
yeah, definitely like that. So, and I remember doing with Ray Ordonez, I got some great feedback on that. Um, and even just other players as well. Now I got to start diving into hockey. Got to look into some hockey, some boxing, other
If
areas as well. Because
I
I
may,
because I've been doing a lot of.
if
Wait,
I may,
hold up, Avery, hold up, Avery.
wait.
I've been doing a lot of baseball lately. I've noticed, so I gotta start branching out more, not just in sports, but also like even actors and stuff like that. So it's intriguing. It's very intriguing as the more I bring this up, the more the brand grows. So I like where
Yeah,
this is going. I like where it's
yeah.
going. Um,
Interesting you mentioned hockey. We're having, the hockey playoffs now. But, just as a side note, another name that falls into the category. Have we forgotten about Sean Avery? Boy, do some research on that one. Oh man, as a New York sports fan,
let,
sir, you
let,
are
let,
going to
let's
be very intrigued about that gentleman. You are
let's
going
let,
to be very intrigued about that gentleman right there.
let's leave it right there. Let's leave it
Yeah,
right there. But Avery, thank you so much. Um, Steve Avery, fantastic pitcher during his time, and hopefully, everything is going well with him nowadays. But yeah, he'll forever be a Atlanta Brave legend for sure.
yeah,
As for those of you tuning in, hopefully you guys enjoy this content and stay tuned for many more content in the future for Have We Forgotten, and just stay tuned everything that we put out here on the MMM Journal. Have a great Monday. Have a great week. Be safe. And may God bless each and every one of you. Take care.